With the death of the AG Racing League's founder and creator of anti-gravity technology in 2127, the very sport itself was thrown into turmoil. Not only had the sport's father been lost, but so too the voice of reason keeping it to its principles. What was to follow would be a dark time full of corruption, death, and the fall of the world's most beloved form of entertainment. So popular was the pastime, and so much had it ingrained itself into the human condition, that nothing could keep it down, and the league would rise once again.
Hello, my honey. Hello, my rack.
After taking complete control of the F7200 Commission, Overtel declared Quirex as an independent entity, distancing themselves from the race team so it could evade any connection in what was to come. During the 2137 season, the Goteki 45 headquarters is bombed, forcing them to withdraw from the league. In 2140, Icarus founder Bernston Burns dies, and Icarus shuts down in its entirety. Later in 2149, Quirex, previously under Overtel control, is taken over by Tigron Enterprises, a facet of a Russian criminal syndicate who had previously overthrown the country's government. Finally, in 2150, Overtel announces the upgrade of the league to the F9000, which would see the most drastic changes in AG racing in its entire history. Despite it taking almost 70 years, Overtel had finally achieved what it had wanted since they were implicated in the assassination of Chuck Hoffman. AG racing was theirs to control, and drain for every last penny it was worth. By systematically eliminating their competitors through the most underhanded and illegal of ways, Overtel had achieved market dominance, while their team still competed in the race. If Quirex met an opponent they couldn't beat, the opposing team would mysteriously disappear, or their company would be liquidated out of nowhere. The official word is that Quirex was taken over by Tigron due to financial trouble, but more likely is that the profits were siphoned off from the puppet corporation by Overtel, and the organisation had been promised to the criminal Tigron, who Overtel was clearly in league with, when they were no longer of use. Regardless of their means, Overtel could now do whatever they pleased with AG Racing, and as if to add insult to injury, the original innovators of the sport, AG Systems, would go bankrupt a few years after Overtel's rise to power. Despite their best efforts though, competing companies continued to rise, including Van Uber, EGR, and G-Tech, who would make their coming league very difficult for its corporate overlords. In 2156, the new F9000 League commences, now officially named the F9000 International Federation of Anti-Gravity Racing. At first, all goes as Overtel desires. Public response to the amped up nature of the race is extremely positive, and profits are at an all-time high. As far as the general public knows, the new changes are even endorsed by the Belmondo Foundation, with the now grown descendant of Piero Belmondo, Natasha, taking part as a pilot herself. Soon though, the cracks begin to show, with the formation of the Anti-Gravity Purity Coalition in 2162, a group made up of AG racing purists dismayed at the drastic changes to the sport, including convoluted track layouts, excessive speeds, and the overuse of high-powered weaponry. The sport's woes would only be compounded a mere 2 years later when a section of underground track at Temtesh Bay collapsed, killing 6 pilots and trapping many others for several days. Investigations into the disaster concluded it was caused by the introduction of high-powered super missiles into the race. Despite this, the league was not halted, and seemingly no repercussions were felt by Overtel. As a result of this, 3 pilots subsequently withdrew from the league entirely in protest. As the years rolled on, incidents continued to occur, and suspicions grew among the teams and viewing public alike. So much to the extent that Aircom pulled out of the sport altogether in 2168 over league policies. Finally, in 2170, the years of incidents and allegations came to a head when the Anti-Gravity Purity Coalition finally gained sufficient evidence to go public against the F9000 League and Overtel, releasing documents exposing the corruption rife within the sport, the illegal undertakings by Overtel, and their connections with criminal organisations. In short order, the whole F9000 League is suspended, and Overtel headquarters are raided by federal officers, with several high-profile arrests taking place. Just like that, almost a century of fraudulent practices was brought to an end. However, the Purity Coalition did not anticipate the scale of ruin the collapse of AG racing would bring about. Even now, few people appreciated how deeply ingrained the sport had become in both culture and economics. Almost overnight, the global economic market crashed, entire governments were toppled, and large-scale riots ensued. While some companies would barely survive, either by mergers or refocusing their resources, most would not last, with a few re-emerging only after the ensuing economic depression had passed an entire decade later. The massive depression of the 2170s would leave a lasting impression on the world. The underhanded practices of Overtel had become a distinct warning against future hubris. Eventually though, the economic situation would begin to stabilise, and the public would start to recall the classic years of AG racing. Amateur enthusiasts would begin restoring old racing craft, and by 2182, casual events would be held on makeshift circuits embodying the spirit of the old F3600 and F5000 leagues. A renewed interest for the sport explodes, and in 2185 an amateur racing tournament is held in Nevada to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Pierre Belmondo's first anti-gravity flight. The event is a massive success, with pilots gaining sponsors from many original race contenders, including a reformed AG Systems. By far the biggest and most well-received announcement of the event is by Natasha Belmondo, now director of the Belmondo Foundation, where she reveals the creation of the FX150 Amateur League, an official AG racing league for fans of the sport, by fans of the sport. The league is by far one of the most successful to ever occur, with pilots and sponsors flocking to participate. After 10 years, the FX300 Professional League is announced, after corporate sponsors voicing a desire to field their own teams. It was to be the first time AG racing had taken place professionally in nearly 30 years. In 2197, the first FX300 League started, occurring in a single location as some classic leagues had, the artificial island of Makana. Concerns were abound about the future of the sport, with many fearing it would fall into the same traps it had in the past. But over the 10 years of the new and mostly controversy-free league, concerns began to abate. Due to the league's sheer popularity, tracks outside Makana were constructed, and a transition league was announced. The FX350 League, where teams could compete on the new tracks and try out prototype ships, lasted until the FX400 League would begin in 2207. Beyond this, it's relatively unknown what happened to AG racing as a sport, but despite its role as a tentpole for global economy and technological innovation, there were still problems all across the world. Problems of pollution and climate change had not just gone away, and humanity would eventually be forced to leave behind not just AG racing, but the planet itself, expanding out into the solar system, using the technology Pierre Belmondo had pioneered centuries previously. As they always had though, humanity would feel the need for an adrenaline-laden sport, and AG racing would rise once again to capture the attention of people throughout the solar system.